The reason why perspective caught on in art is Alberti, 10 years after Brunelleschi did his experiment, Alberti wrote a book and he told the how-to of how to do perspective for all the artists, and that's why it caught on. This is the way you create perspective. Just scroll right through. So you make the centric point, as it was called by Alberti. Is perspective more real than pre-perspective? Here's a pre-perspectival image of an unknown Italian artist for Florence. And here's a post-perspectival image of Florence. Which one is more real? Anyone? Well, there's advantages and disadvantages of each way of seeing. Can we agree on that? You know, the pre-perspectival view of Florence, go back to, yeah, that has soul. You feel those buildings. You can look around corners. You're on top of it. You're in it. Okay, go to the next one. The next one, you have this bird's eye view. It's very, it's symmetrical and it's very clear, and you can certainly see more of Florence, but it loses something too. It loses something in soul. No matter what way we see the world, we have blind spots. Now, here's a native painting by Pablito Velarde, which is a modern painting. It's not using perspective at all. But I want to make an important point. It's not because indigenous artists can't use perspective, it's because they often choose not to. Okay, go to the next slide. Here's another painting by Pablito Velarde, and look how there is perspective in the buildings, the adobe. This is all over the map, and yet you have the center storyteller is humongous. Well, that's because I think, I haven't spoken to her personally, but the way she feels it is the storyteller is very important, the center of her attention. I want to say this, that linear time is an illusion. I really want to get us thinking outside of linear time. Linear time is a worldview. And like any other worldview, it systematically includes and excludes certain things into your consciousness. And the development of rational thought is something that happened with all human beings, but it chose to be more emphasized in Western thinking. Western philosophers were trying their best, and I think they did it out of the greatest intent, to mirror literally what they thought was the divine worldview. But other peoples in the world were thinking about things completely differently, and they both have very strong validity. I would say that in the first development of rational thought in the West, under Socrates and Plato, there were some pretty cool things happening then. I do not want to put that down at all, because in fact, a lot of what was happening there is very integral to our principles of dialogue. Socrates radically questioned assumptions. In fact, the only assumption he made was that everything he ever knew or ever learned was untrue. He felt that the examined life was the most important thing to do. That's how we define ourselves as being human. At that time, according to Gebser, that's when rational thought was at its zenith. That's when it was really cooking. But later on, it degraded. It became more utilitarian, which is the way it is today. And it's used to divide. It divides our consciousness from the world. So, pre-perspective times, we understood that the soul in the world had energy. The anima mundi of the world was alive, which is the way that Socrates and Plato thought, and even Aristotle thought. In fact, Aristotle was more radical than Plato. Plato thought that the I emanated energy, and the objects of the world emanated energy back. Aristotle was more, gave the credit to the objects of the world. They emanated all the energy, and the I was kind of a reflexive thing. The point is that the world was alive. But with perspective, we are distancing ourselves from the world. See, the world is animate. The world is unfolding in energies. Time is an unfolding. Everything is moving. Everything is in flux. But when we look on the world and we say this is the realistic view with a stationary eye, we're projecting our consciousness onto the world and we're creating motion. We're giving ourselves credit for creating motion, so our ego becomes one with time. See, we've taken away the soul from the world. We've taken away the motion. The only motion that's happening if we give it that credit. That's really a big loss. But as Leroy brilliantly said in 2008, I equals time. And when he said that statement, he was encapsulating the last 500 years of history. He said, I want a divorce from time. You know, in ancient times, everybody would have understood that they're time. That time is within them. This is why Leon Secretero later on says time is the fifth element. That time is within us. And like all the elements happen in connection with each other. There's no element that's separate from another element. Light, air, water, earth, all the elements are necessary to